One of the videos I have explains that in most cases, 9mm PAK, that's blank, pistol, semi-automatic or non, should not be used. Ghost guns, NFA, AOW, ATF, WTF, BBQ, whether you're a felon or not, whether it's smoothbore or rifled, it's a blank pistol and it's designed on purpose to make it as difficult as possible and not worth the effort because there are easier methods. Now, someone posted, I have 500 rounds through one I did by making a rifle barrel for it. Now, in the United States and many other areas, all that meant is you made yourself a die-cast metal. Usually they're made out of die-cast. That just means that you made a street-legal gun. And I explicitly state in my channel, the video I put up, that for the most part, it's never worth doing it, but if you want to do it, that's fine. But it's never really financially intelligent. Someone told me that they recommended for me, through my route, that I start with an 80% build. Well, that would break down to me buying the same parts everybody else does through a military-industrial complex that would just cause me to still pay into it. And doing the 80% build instead of designing a better gun that's easier to make, that's still semi-auto or just fires easily. I've come up with about a dozen double-action pistol mechanisms that eliminate almost all of the parts down to one compliant part. It's a trigger that has a weighted head that acts as a hammer on a leaf spring. And I'll do it as best I can by using my hand to do this kind of shape. You let the hammer, this will be the head of the hammer here, fall back past, let's say, a pin. And it goes like this and bends, and only slightly. And you make it to where down here, the arm representing the trigger being pulled back this way makes it bend a lot before it finally gets past it. It takes little effort to go into cocked position or set to release on this, we'll call it a sear, even though it's just a metal pin, and then it flings the hammer forward to hit a firing pin that runs under inertia to set off the charge. The act of doing that means that you have very little actual pressure in poundage to fire to fire a gun. A low poundage or low travel trigger, not a hair trigger. That would also be inherently drop safe because having the hammer like this, the weight of the hammer would pull on the pin, but the trigger wouldn't move backwards, and the bulk of the mass is in the trigger head, not in the leaf spring. I came up with this because I wanted to find a way to where I could pull a trigger and it would just fling it forward, make a dunk-dunk noise on the back of literally a tiny little bongo I'd stick into a gun for a toy. This is actually something I came up with as a kid, and I just kind of rediscovered it later, but that would work, truly, to do centerfire or rimfire cartridges. Now, the reason I'm coming up with these designs is I may be able to design a gun that's even easier to build so that you wouldn't need an 80% anything. You'd start with a 0% a 0% lower by just making a gun. All of the designs that are semi-auto rely on a lot of mechanism and fiddling around in the mechanics for what I've broken down to being one moving part for most of the firing mechanism. The rest of it's the recoil-operated or other mechanism, which could be chained to this and not just on the trigger, for ejecting a shell after it's fired and then somehow racking another cartridge. Or, chambering. Now, one of the methods to get around that stage is just to exploit the Brune-Littrige gun, where the trigger was mounted to the barrel and the barrel slid over the cartridge, fired it, and then as you released, it would then, only on release, work some sort of cam or something and fling the cartridge out. The Brune-Littrige pistol was a low-caliber one. Looked like a 22 rimfire, but it's actually centerfire something similar to 22. Let's say 25 ACP and be done with it. Or a rimless 22 Magnum, let's say. And the gun was very reliable. And in that case, the trigger, just hanging onto the barrel and pushing it back, would push the barrel back over, let's say, a sleeve on the inside that would push back on something behind the wall that would pull back on the firing pin. Once it got beyond a certain point of you pulling back, it would just auto-release and fire. Now, I've also found a way to get rid of that in a shotgun using what's called a glass breaker or escape tool or whatever for a car. And what it is you press on a windshield or a side window with it. It has a little ring-shaped thing you press on, and that pushes inside of the body of the handle. As it pushes in, it pulls back on, let's say, a washer, let's call it, that's slightly offset, say like this. And as it goes back, it eventually shoves it in the middle and fires forward, and a firing pin goes through. It looks all the world like a 12-gauge shotgun firing pin, and it slides forward and impacts the glass violently and breaks it. That impact force is almost identical to the needed one for not just a shotgun firing pin, but for rim fire and for all center fires. So you can make, in that case, I was going to use that for not a slam fire shotgun where the barrel slides into the body and then hits a fixed firing pin. It would press back on literally one of these glass breakers, fire the shell, and then you'd end up only modifications if you use the right company-produced Schedule 40 pipe, which might match, or better yet, a Schedule 80 bored out to make a chamber. You'd have a piece of pipe bored on each end so it looks identical, so it just looks like a Schedule 40. Forcing cone integrated into it, if you want it. And a body that would just be a 1-inch pipe that the inside was all altered so that it would fit over the 3/4 inch. And a simple cap in the back. And then you just drop in your firing pin mechanism readily made, and you'd be able to pull the gun back and have a buttstock. And then to set it off, instead of going clunk, you just pull back until it went off by surprise. So you'd be aiming the entire time. A very effective shotgun. And you can do the same thing for literally any other cartridge. And then to graduate to the next evolution, you cut a slot in it to where the cartridge could be fitted in, and then when you pulled it forward, it would go over a leaf spring in there that would grab the edge of it by going tick, grab the edge of the cartridge as the barrel's moving this way, and it would just eventually get to the point that it would just flick the thing out. The sudden flicking it out thing would require a little more articulation on the barrel than just using a steel pipe, but not much, or another mechanism besides just the firing pin set. Now, why am I doing this verbally for 7 minutes and 20 seconds? I'll send you links for the different methods. I talked to the other channel, 4 Years Online, however, you must realize the only reason either of us did this was out of sheer defiance. The websites that sell blank firing pistols have a statement saying they cannot be converted to shoot real ammunition. That's alone enough to cause a person to go into contrarian mode and do this. One of my favorite websites that used to sell kits, complete kits, or just partial kits, so you'd have the 80% lower thing, would sell you all the parts. You just had to drill holes to make a Derringer, a double-barrel 410 shotgun pistol that you could put 45 Colt in. Plenty enough. It was sometimes called the poor man's judge. It's a company called Cobra and Daniel Defense and Leonad and a bunch of other names because they kept changing names because out of defiance, they sold replacement parts that you could legally get away with selling for machine guns instead of selling us the actual guns people wanted. Oh, it's all about the machine guns because I'm defying it. It's the guy. It's the company that originally is responsible for the Tech 9 or Mac 10 or whatever it is machine gun becoming a problem. They're also responsible for the only case I've heard of somebody hurting themselves with a fucking flare gun. And their methodology for proving to me and everybody else out here, I'm not the only FUD who says this, that they're a responsible and real representation of Second Amendment rights in the United States or whatever, is they deliberately went out of their way to be a pain in the ass and sell machine gun parts because they're technically not illegal. You know how much money they made? Enough to go out of business. They're really not worth it. A current flare gun I just saw on the market is reusing the exact patentable design they came up with for a sheet metal lower receiver for a break action pistol, along with a little thing that made it to where you couldn't open the mechanism until you took it off safety or set safety to take it open or whatever. And I mean, it's identical. Then this guy goes off on claiming Nikola Tesla invented the light bulb when he invented the fluorescent light. Please check his patents, and no, on his deathbed he didn't do XYZ, and yes, he did scare people into thinking that a resistor or capacitor substitution box was some sort of deadly weapon. Because geeks do that. most geeks do that as a joke. Anyway, this person gave me some really cool ideas, like using something that would normally be a tap and die set ream for making threads, converting it, because it's hardened steel and has lots of little tick, 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 tick edges to it, modifying that into what he maybe didn't know, which is a broach method for making rifling in a barrel. Meanwhile, I want to do electro rifling. Yes, part of what I do when it comes to firearms videos is because I'm being defiant of a system that's designed to tell you what you can't do instead of explaining we're legally bound to tell you what you're allowed to do. Like the cop that pulls you over and strongly implies or just fucking lies to you about saying you don't have the right to say no to anything the cop says. We have a system where you cannot legally get a lawyer, a judge, to admit you're allowed to say no to a cop under certain conditions. So yeah, defying bullshit like this is important. Anyway, the video the person posted under was me stating that you really just don't want to do a blank conversion over, and then I said that you should use it as a template for building replacement parts that would fix it, and then from there, maybe you could add them in. Now, on other videos, including the channel that was being referenced here, I could not find completely clear instructions or information or links to them. Meanwhile, we're underneath a video where I put links to every fucking thing I talk about. Empowering people every day to be as defiant or compliant as you wish to be, or malicious compliance by being defiant. I'm not bitching this person out. It's just that I just wanted to see the video where someone altered one of these taps to make it a more efficient method, because driving a rifling button through and warping the metal versus running a broaching tool through that would be self-cleaning maybe because of the angles, so that you could literally just drag it through and push it through one piece and another each size to make the rifling in a more practical way, versus the method I found recently, which is you make a square button that fits in and run it through by twisting it, by making it a twisted piece, and it does the rifling for you very nicely. It still warps it a bit, but it's much more symmetrical. It isn't a rifling button that you do hydraulically, because all you're doing is legally putting in rifling, but what you're really doing is paradox rifling, which works well in a shotgun because the shot works great. And now we get back to the Derringer double-barrel 410 shotgun pistol that's really just supposed to be a 45 Colt. The bore diameter is 45 caliber for the rifling. And if you fire a shot through it, unless the rifling is done paradox style, the 410 bore that it's going to be shooting through gets interfered with. A universal gun that way. A handgun, practical, concealable, legal. But defiant people saying, I'm going to convert this because I'm told not to, and the people selling the blank pistols are making money off you because it's more expensive than going to Flatspot dot whatever. I might link to it if I'm being generous, where you can just ask them to send you the template for the same cost as the metal because the paper's cheaper, one-to-one printout for you to make a metal handgun Derringer that you can put 2 barrels on, and how to use a specific type of pipe to make that barrel. By the way, you have to start with Schedule 10 and then sleeve it in something else and then bond it. And I'd recommend tinning flux soldering it after sanding the inner pipe this way so that it has no reason to move forward and back, and the outer pipe sanding it the other way, getting them the right size. Or maybe threading them so that it really doesn't need any of that and it works perfectly and it's absolutely dead on. Nikola Tesla did not actually invent the light bulb. There were several dozen other people who did it. Perfecting the light bulb can be argued. Did the fluorescent bulb, sir. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. I do appreciate this person's commentary and data, but I just wanted to find a channel that explained what he was talking about clearly. I'll do my best. We all do our best. And I still don't recommend converting blank guns when it's more expensive and designed to feed into a system that's trying to tease you into shooting your foot or shooting your eye out. Just a ramble and a rant. No links for the day. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.